The letter arrived on a Tuesday. No return address. No markings except her name, Alana Griffin, typed neatly in all caps across a faded yellow envelope. It had been slipped into her mailbox between a stack of bills and a grocery coupon flyer, like it didn't matter at all. But the moment she touched it, Alana knew something was different. The paper was heavier than it should have been, like it carried weight far beyond its physical mass. She almost tossed it aside. Almost. But something, maybe the precision of her name, or the way her fingers tingled when they brushed the edge, made her pause and open it. Inside was a single page, folded once. The handwriting was tight, slanted, deliberate. Alana, I knew your father when we were both locked in cell block C. He saved my life once, and then he disappeared. I don't know what lies you were told, but he didn't die the way they said. If you want to know the truth, come find me. I've got cancer. I don't have long. L.C. Harmon, inmate number 745929, Unit D, Angola Prison. Alana read it twice, then a third time. Her father, Marcus Griffin, had died 25 years ago in a car crash, or so she'd been told. She stared at the letter for what felt like hours. She hadn't spoken her father's name aloud in years. Hadn't needed to. He was a footnote in her life story, an early tragedy that people offered awkward condolences for, before moving on to lighter topics. But the words in this letter clawed at something buried, something that didn't sit right. Her father in prison? Her mind rejected the idea outright. Marcus had been a respected high school teacher, a church deacon. Her mother had always said the accident happened late at night, coming home from work. End of story. But Alana had lived long enough to know. End of story never really meant end of truth. That night, Alana sat at her kitchen table with a glass of red wine she didn't touch. She was 39, a civil rights attorney in Atlanta, known for being unshakable in the courtroom. But the paper in front of her made her hands tremble. She Googled the name, L.C. Harmon. Nothing recent, a few articles from the 90s, back when local newspapers still covered prison beatings and wrongful convictions like they mattered. The name appeared in a story dated 1997. Inmate Louis L.C. Harmon transferred to Angola after altercation at Parchman Farm. History of solitary confinement. No family listed. Her stomach twisted. If this man knew her father, if this wasn't a scam, then she'd been living under a lie for most of her life. By midnight, Alana was on her second glass, but no closer to sleep. She pulled a shoebox from the back of her closet. It held the few photos she had of her father, a tall, lean man with a calm smile and sad eyes, the kind of man who looked like he carried weight for everyone around him. In one photo, he stood with a group of students, arm around a boy who looked too small to be wearing a graduation robe. The caption on the back, written in her mother's elegant script, read, "Marcus with Jamal, first in his family to graduate." That was the man she knew, not a prisoner, not someone who would have ended up in cell block C. Right? The next morning, she called her mother. "Mom," she began carefully, "I got a strange letter about Gad." A pause. Then, "What kind of letter?" Alana hesitated. "From someone claiming to know him in prison. Someone named L.C. Harmon." Silence. Alana counted the seconds before her mother responded. "I told you he died in a car crash," she finally said, her voice flat. "That's all you need to know." "No, Mama," Alana said, louder than she meant. "That's what you wanted me to know. What I need the truth." Her mother sighed. "Then I hope you're ready to carry it." and the line went dead. 3 days later, Alana stood at the gates of Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola. The sun was brutal, the kind that scorched through skin and memory. She'd made the call, arranged the visit, told the prison she was investigating a long-buried wrongful death claim. It wasn't a total lie. The guards were cautious but respectful. One escorted her across the yard, through steel doors and clanging corridors, until they reached a dim visiting room. Behind the glass, thin as paper and twice as pale, sat an old man in a prison jumpsuit. He raised his head slowly and looked her dead in the eye. "You got your daddy's eyes," L.C. Harmon said. Alana didn't speak at first. She studied the man behind the glass. L.C. Harmon's face was a map of decades spent in confinement. Hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, skin the color of clay dried under too many suns. His hands trembled slightly as he held the phone. "You said you knew my father," she said finally. "I did." "In prison?" He nodded. "Cell Block C, Angola, 1994. Alana narrowed her eyes. "My father died in a car accident that year." LC exhaled sharply, as if the words tasted like rust. "That's what they told you. What they needed you to believe." "Then tell me the truth," Alana demanded. LC looked away for a long moment, like he was staring into a tunnel only he could see. When he looked back, his voice dropped lower. "Your father wasn't no criminal, Miss Griffin. He was a whistleblower." Alana blinked. "What?" "He was a teacher, like you knew. But he also worked with some folks trying to expose corruption in the local police back in Monroe. There were beatings, deaths. Your daddy had proof, names, photographs." Alana's fingers tightened around the phone. They warned him to stop, told him to stay quiet. When he didn't, LC paused, eyes glassy. They framed him, planted drugs, called it possession with intent, sent him here. "No," Alana whispered. "That's not possible. My mother, she would have told me." "She was scared," LC said gently. "They threatened her too. Said if she talked, she'd lose you. Or worse." Alana swallowed hard, heat rising in her chest. LC continued, "Your father was assigned to my block. We shared a cell for 3 months. He never stopped talking about you. Said your laugh could crack open concrete. Showed me a photo once, you on his shoulders at a fair." Alana remembered that day. The pink cotton candy, the carousel, her dad's deep laugh when she tried to feed him a piece with sticky fingers. She felt the first crack in the wall she built around his memory. "Why now?" she asked. "Why wait 25 years to tell me this?" LC sighed. "Because I'm dying, baby. They told me 6 months, maybe less. Liver's gone. I can feel it." He pressed his hand flat against the glass. "I've been carrying your father's truth all this time. I can't die with it buried." Alana didn't move. "I ain't asking you to believe me," he added. "But there's proof. In here." He tapped his chest, "and in a place only your father trusted me with." Alana stared at him. "What kind of place?" LC leaned forward. "A safe deposit box. Baton Rouge. Under your father's alias." He wrote everything down. Documents, audio, names, everything. Alana's thoughts churned like a storm tide. A box, a different name, a father she never truly knew. "You expect me to believe all this?" she asked. "Just like that?" "No," LC said. "I expect you to find out." He scribbled something on a yellowed napkin and pressed it to the glass. A name, Elias Monroe. A location, Bay First Bank, Baton Rouge, Box 214. That's the name he used. Elias was his middle name. Monroe, his mama's maiden name. He figured nobody'd think to look under that. Alana copied it down. Her hand shook. Why would he trust you with this? Elsie looked at her for a long time. Because I saved his life once, and he saved mine 100 times after. Alana left the prison in silence. The air outside felt thinner, heavier. She sat in her rental car with the letter from last week in one hand and the napkin in the other. She wanted to scream, to cry, to drive straight to her mother's house and demand the truth with fire in her eyes. Instead, she sat and remembered her father's hands. How steady they were, how safe they made her feel, how she had never, not once, questioned the version of him she'd been handed. Until now. She took a deep breath and started the car. Alana arrived in Baton Rouge late that afternoon, the sun hanging low in the sky like a fiery bruise. The bank was an old stone building, solid and unremarkable, with a faded sign that read, Bay First Bank. Alana parked in the lot, her hands sweating against the steering wheel. She hadn't told anyone where she was going, not her mother, not her friends. She didn't know who she could trust anymore. She crossed the polished floors of the lobby, the air conditioning making the temperature feel artificial, like a world designed to be too perfect for what she was about to uncover. The woman at the counter gave her a polite but distant smile. "How can I help you today, ma'am?" "I'm here to access a safe deposit box," Alana said, voice steadier than she felt. "Box 214. The teller led her to a small, windowless room at the back of the bank. The smell of paper and dust lingered in the stale air. "I'll need to verify your identification, ma'am," the teller said as she slid a form in front of Alana. Alana nodded, filling in her details with practiced precision. Everything felt wrong, too easy. Her fingers drummed nervously on the countertop as the teller made a call to the manager. When the manager arrived, a tall, wiry man with an air of indifference, Alana felt her heart skip. "Ms. Griffin?" he asked, glancing at his clipboard. "Yes." He led her to a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only," and with a metallic click, the door opened. Inside was a dark room, rows of locked boxes on metal shelves. "This way," the manager said, pulling a key from his belt. The box was small, but the weight of it felt enormous when Alana took it in her hands. The metal was cold, like the weight of a forgotten secret. Once in her car, Alana wasted no time. She opened the box, her hands trembling as the lock clicked open. Inside was a collection of old photographs, a few small papers, and a dusty tape recorder. Her father's handwriting was on the top of one of the papers. "For Alana, if you're reading this, then the truth is finally yours." Her heart pounded as she picked up the photographs. The first one was of a man she didn't recognize, a tall figure standing next to a much younger Marcus Griffin. The man wore a prison jumpsuit. Behind them was a chain-link fence and a small window, barely visible through the fogged glass. The caption beneath the photo read, "Elsie Harmon, 1994, Angola." The second photo was more recent, showing a group of officers in uniform standing around a table filled with stacks of cash. Alana's stomach twisted as she saw the familiar face of a local sheriff, the same one who had been involved in her father's arrest. The photos were damning enough, but it was the tape recorder that made Alana's hands shake as she pressed play. The crackling noise filled the car, followed by a low, familiar voice. "Marcus Griffin, July 16, 1994. You're about to hear the truth. The police in Monroe, they're dirty. They've been protecting drug dealers, running protection rackets, and they've been doing it for years. I've got enough proof to take them down, but..." There was a pause, the sound of a chair scraping against the floor. "I'm afraid it's too late. They know what I've got. They're coming for me." Alana's breath caught in her throat. She listened as her father's voice continued, detailing the corruption he'd uncovered. Names, dates, police officers he'd been following. The recording was filled with a sense of urgency, but also resignation. The last words on the tape made her blood run cold. "They won't stop until they destroy me. And if you're listening to this, Alana, it's because they've destroyed me. They framed me. They've taken everything. But don't let them take you. Find the truth and expose it. Alana sat frozen in the car, the weight of her father's words pressing on her chest. The tape had stopped, but the silence was suffocating. She had spent her whole life believing her father had died in an accident, but now it seemed as though he'd been hunted. They'd set him up, framed him, and destroyed him, and no one had ever told her the truth. She looked at the photograph of the sheriff again, the man who had been a hero in her community, the man who had stood at the front of the parade every year, the same man who had put her father in a cell and claimed his death was an accident. Alana felt her stomach twist with anger, with a sorrow she couldn't name. She had a choice now. She could walk away, pretend she never found this box, pretend none of this mattered, or she could expose the lies and risk losing everything in the process. A decision was made before she even realized it. There was no walking away, not after hearing her father's voice, not after seeing the corruption that ran deeper than she could have imagined. Alana's jaw set with resolve. She had to go back to Monroe, back to the people who'd buried the truth. And she wasn't going to stop until she'd torn everything down. She slammed the car into gear and sped off down the road. Alana had never felt more alone. The drive back to Monroe was a blur, a series of miles slipping away as her mind churned through the evidence she'd uncovered. The tape, the photographs, her father's voice ringing in her ears like a warning. She felt like she was walking into a trap, but the weight of the truth was heavier than any fear she could feel. When she pulled up to her mother's house, the sun was just beginning to set, casting long shadows across the porch. Her mother wasn't home, and Alana took a moment to breathe, the stillness of the house amplifying her isolation. It wasn't enough to have the proof. The people who had framed her father were still in power, still untouchable. She needed help. The first place she went was the local courthouse. She had been there once as a child, sitting in the back row during the town meetings. Now, as an adult, it felt different, colder, more foreboding. She crossed the marble floors to the receptionist, who looked up with practiced indifference. "I'm looking for information on a case from the 90s, Alana said, trying to keep her voice steady. The wrongful arrest and death of Marcus Griffin. Her receptionist's smile faltered for just a second. "I'm afraid that information is sealed, ma'am," she said. "There's nothing we can provide." Alana's heart raced. She leaned forward, voice dropping to a whisper. "You don't understand. My father was framed, and I have the proof." The receptionist's eyes flickered nervously. "I'm sorry, I can't help you." Before Alana could press further, a voice interrupted her. "Can I help you, ma'am?" A voice belonged to Sheriff Harold Carter. His tall, imposing frame filled the doorway. His uniform was spotless, but there was something in his eyes, something cold. Alana's blood ran cold, too. The sheriff's face was familiar, too familiar. He had been the man who led her father's arrest, the man who had never once questioned the charges. "I'm looking into the case of Marcus Griffin," Alana said, trying to keep her composure. "The wrongful arrest, the corruption in the police department." Sheriff Carter's smile was tight, his eyes narrowing. "You're digging up old ghosts, Miss Griffin. Your father's death was a tragedy, but there's nothing to be done about it now." Alana's throat tightened. "No, there is something to be done. I've seen the evidence. You and your officers, you framed my father." Carter's smile disappeared. His hand slid into his pocket, and Alana's heart skipped a beat. "Listen to me, girl," he said, voice low and menacing. "You don't want to go down this road. You have no idea what you're up against." Alana stepped back, her hand reaching instinctively for the door handle. She had been warned. But the warning only fueled her resolve. "Why did you do it?" she asked. "Why destroy my father?" Carter didn't answer immediately. Instead, his gaze hardened, and Alana could see the rage building behind his calm facade. "Your father was a problem, a big problem. He started poking around where he shouldn't have, and when people start poking around, they get buried, just like your father did. You didn't just kill him," Alana shot back. "You silenced him. You took everything from him, from me." For a moment, the sheriff didn't speak. his eyes locked onto hers, as if weighing her next words. Then, with a final chilling smile, he spoke again. "You've already lost, Alana. You just don't know it yet." Alana didn't wait for him to say more. She turned and stormed out of the courthouse, her hands shaking at her sides. She knew what he was capable of. He had destroyed her father, and now he was threatening her. She could feel the walls closing in, but she wasn't going to stop. Not now, not when she was so close. But as she drove out of town, heading toward the outskirts, a nagging thought crept into her mind. How much of this was a personal vendetta? How much was it about power? How deep did the corruption run? She needed answers, more than just documents. She needed people willing to speak, willing to testify, and she knew that would not be easy. She drove toward the only place that could give her what she needed, the town's old records office. The records office was a small, decrepit building on the outskirts of Monroe. Its walls were covered in peeling paint, the windows cracked and fogged with age. Inside, the air smelled like mildew and dust. The clerk behind the counter was an elderly man who looked up over his glasses as Alana approached. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice soft but sharp. "I'm looking for records," Alana said, keeping her voice low. "Documents related to a case from 1994. Marcus Griffin, I know they're here." The clerk blinked, his face unreadable. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then slowly, he nodded. "Follow me," he said, turning toward a back room filled with filing cabinets. Alana felt the weight of every step she took into the back room. It smelled of paper and mildew, and the dim light cast long shadows on the rows of old files. The clerk led her to a cabinet marked "Closed Cases." He pulled out a file. "This is the one you're looking for," he said, handing it to her. The file was thin, barely anything inside, yet Alana felt its weight, as though it contained more than just paper. She opened it, her hands shaking, and began to read. There were photos, documents, handwritten notes, and, buried in the middle of the file, a single sheet of paper with a familiar name, Sheriff Harold Carter, witness statement. Her breath caught in her throat. Alana's hands trembled as she read the witness statement. The document was old, yellowed with age, and the ink had begun to fade in places, but the words were clear enough. It was a statement from a former deputy, someone who had worked under Sheriff Carter back in the 90s. The deputy, now long retired, had made a choice to come forward, detailing the corruption he had witnessed firsthand. He described how Marcus Griffin had stumbled upon a large drug trafficking operation, being run by some of the town's most influential figures, including Sheriff Carter. The deputy had tried to warn Marcus, but it was too late. Carter and the others had framed Marcus, covered up the truth, and silenced anyone who might speak out. But there was one line that stood out above all others. The truth is out there. Carter's a murderer, and if you're reading this, someone's come to take him down. It might be too late for me, but you're the one who can finish it. The realization hit her like a wave. The deputy's last words confirmed everything. Marcus wasn't just a victim of a wrongful arrest. He had been part of something much larger. The sheriff had been running drugs through the prison system for years, using his position of power to protect his operation. But there was more. Alana had always wondered why the case had been so tightly controlled, why no one had dared to investigate further. The sheriff was untouchable, but the deputy's statement revealed a conspiracy that went beyond Marcus, beyond even the sheriff. There were people in the community who had helped cover up the truth. The system that had protected them was now turning against her. Alana felt a fire ignite in her chest. The anger she had been holding back for so long finally bubbled to the surface. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice, about righting the wrongs her father had suffered and exposing the truth for everyone to see. She couldn't do it alone. She needed proof, and she needed to make sure that what happened to her father didn't happen to her. She had already planned her next step. The recording, the photos, the statement. They were all pieces of the puzzle, but they weren't enough. She needed the final link, Sheriff Carter's own confession. She knew where it was. It was hidden in his office. The next morning, Alana stood outside the sheriff's office, her heart hammering in her chest. She knew what she had to do, but it felt like she was stepping into a lion's den. If Carter found out what she was doing, he would make sure she didn't get out alive. But Alana wasn't going to let fear stop her. Not now. Not after everything she had uncovered. She had been hunting the truth for too long to back down now. She slipped inside through the back door, using the old key she had found in the records office. Her fingers brushed the cold metal of the lock as she quietly opened the door to Carter's office. The room was dimly lit, filled with the scent of stale paper and leather. She moved quickly, searching through the drawers, but it wasn't long before she found it. The hidden drawer, the one that held the final piece. Inside was a small folder marked with Carter's name. Alana opened it carefully, her eyes scanning the contents. The folder contained a series of photographs, some of them taken in the back alleys of Monroe, others inside a dark room. The people in the photos were clearly involved in some sort of illegal exchange. But the most damning photo was one of Carter himself, shaking hands with known drug dealers, his smile wide and unrepentant. This was it, the final proof, the confession she needed to bring down the entire operation. But as she turned to leave, the door to the office creaked open behind her. Alana's heart skipped a beat. "Leaving so soon, Miss Griffin?" It was Carter, standing in the doorway, his cold eyes locked onto hers. Alana's breath caught in her throat as she slowly turned to face him. Sheriff Carter had never seemed so dangerous. The walls of the office suddenly felt like they were closing in, and her mind raced. The photographs, the folder, the confession. "Carter," she said, her voice shaking but determined. "I have everything. The photos, the tapes, the witness statements. You're going down. It's over." Carter chuckled, his smile icy. "You think this is going to be easy? You think you're the first person to try and take me down? You're nothing but a kid playing in a world you don't understand." Alana stood her ground. "Maybe I don't understand everything, but I know one thing for sure. You're a murderer, and the truth's coming for you." Without warning, Carter lunged toward her, but Alana was faster. She grabbed the folder and bolted for the door, slamming it behind her as she ran down the hallway. Her heart was pounding in her chest as she burst into the parking lot, her eyes scanning for her car. She didn't know how much time she had, but it didn't matter. She was going to make sure the truth came out, one way or another. As she reached her car, she saw a flashing light in the rearview mirror. The sirens were coming. But Alana didn't stop. She gunned the engine and sped off, the open road ahead of her, the weight of the truth heavy in her hands. And this time, she wasn't afraid.